Hello, peace. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to a Thursday Collection Connection, where we're playing that game that's just an excuse to talk about records. A little sick today, but we're going to chug on regardless. Power ahead. So this is a simple game. It's a game I play with my brother. My brother being a Plastic Eric over on the Plastic Soundwave Cults channel. And every week, we each show an album. And the hook is that the album that we talk about and present has to relate to the album shown in the previous video by the other. So that's how we play. Let's move ahead. In Eric's last video, he showed Everything But the Girls, Love Not Money. I've loved that album cover. He's had that since we both lived in the same house together. And it's such an evocative album cover. Like he says, I'm not really sure exactly what it means, but it's just such a striking photo and layout and everything. And so I really like the cover. And I have some Everything But the Girl in my collection, most notably Idlewild, which is the album that has the original version of Apron Strings, which you may know that they re-recorded for the soundtrack of She's Having a Baby. They made a little more organy and sprightly. It's a little more sad and guitar-y. They're both kind of melancholy, bittersweet songs, but had a little more of a tempo in She's Having a Baby. And it's got some other great songs that I love on there. The Night I Heard Caruso Sing is a rare, I think rare, Ben Watt lead vocal that has some lines that really hit me. But my memory of Love Not Money was not liking it. And this is funny coming on the heels of last week's Sugar Cubes album, which was Here Today, Tomorrow, Next Week, which I also remember not liking. And the experience of going back and listening to it for the first time in decades was better than my memory, but vindicated my decision not to repurchase it on CD. It was an album that I had on cassette. Love Not Money, meanwhile, is never one that I own, but it was one that Eric had, and there was some degree of swapping music and stuff. He was a huge influence on me and what I got to listen to, but it seemed a little too sort of light jazz, adult contemporary for my tastes at the time. So I had a completely different experience going back and listening to this record, which I couldn't have told you a single song from it at this point, but it's been about the same. It's been decades since I last heard it. I had made up my mind on it all those decades ago that I didn't care for it, but on this occasion, going back to it, I quite enjoyed it, especially the opening track. Very sprightly. I like the horns. Always like horns, a good horn arrangement on a track. I suppose I've gotten old enough that sort of sophisticated pop, sophistopop, they call it, and light jazz leanings, very coffee shop, appeal to me more now than they did at the time, even though I was always a pop fan. So it's not a pop versus rock thing. It was just a little bit too adult contemporary for me at the time. And maybe I just wasn't ready for it. But that said, to find a connection, I suppose one of the earliest and easiest thoughts to pop up in your head is a duo that is one male, one female. And we've done one recently in Eurythmics, and I certainly thought about bands like the Ting Tings, Bird and the Bee, Tennis, some things to bring it into the 21st century. But the fact that I was able to come up with so many off the top of my head sort of discouraged me. It seemed like maybe it was something a little bit too easy to hit. However, the name of the band, Everything But the Girl, is very interesting. And whether it's apocryphal or true, I'm going to treat it as if it's true because I just read it in my research, that they were inspired by a sign in the window of a furniture store that claimed that they would sell you everything but the girl. And they thought that was a cute little turn of phrase that they could apply to themselves, with Tracy Thorn being sort of the face of the band. I would have guessed that it was a criticism or something that they received at one point, that when the band was up and coming, A&R people or something would say, we like her voice, she's got a great singing voice. don't like the songs or the arrangements. So if you get rid of everything but the girl, then we'll sign on with your band or your new band or Tracy Thorn as a solo artist, but in stubbornly insisting that the band remained together, the duo basically, that they glommed onto that as a band name. That's kind of what I had always guessed at, but apparently it was a sign that they thought was applicable to themselves. But I know of another band that took their name from a sign. And in this case, the band made the sign themselves. They were doing a live performance. They did not yet have a name for their band, but their friend was going to come see them. And in order for that friend to find where they were performing, they made a big sign that they put out, or maybe just put in the window, put out for their friend to know where they were playing. And their friend was named Gomez. And so the sign said something to the effect of, Gomez in here, letting their friend Gomez know where to come see their performance. But people took it to mean that the band was called Gomez, and they just decided to go with it. Now, I've done a Gomez album before some time back in the Collection Connection. I did their debut album, Bring It On. And I'm still skipping over my favorite, their third album, In Our Gun, because I decided that maybe I thought Eric would prefer their fourth album, Split the Difference. This is a 2004 record, and it really feels like they were firing on all cylinders here. I think of the third and fourth albums as the pinnacle of Gomez's output. Had a lot of confidence and good songs and knew what they were doing. Putting it on in the last couple of days, though, it's still a good record, but it was striking me that it is, ironically, due to the title, Split the Difference, a very front-loaded record. It's got a fantastic first half and maybe a little dip in quality on the second half. Not that there's no good songs to be had there, but it's really, I feel like In Your Gun is my favorite, and it's maybe their most consistent to my tastes album. Split the Difference. The first half is as strong or stronger than anything on In Your Gun, but the second half kind of backs off of it a little bit. Although I will throw a shout out to the penultimate song, Nothing Is Wrong. It's got kind of a bland title, doesn't stand out as a song title, but many an album have a next to last track that is a kind of a hidden gem, a buried gem, and this album has one of those. Gomez is a 5-piece band out of England. They have 3 different singers and songwriters that combine in different ways. Sometimes there's big sing-along choruses, and other times different guys will take the lead on songs that I'm guessing that they primarily wrote. I didn't commit to memory their names the way I did. I know I mentioned all their names in the first video, but can't think of them right now. But I think in reality, the title Split the Difference refers to the 2 different paths that the band was on. They were pretty out of step with the British fashions in music of the time. They were not doing Britpop. They had a very sort of blues-based rock, very American-inspired music, kind of throwing back to British invasion bands, like primarily the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, I suppose, that took great inspiration from blues music. But they had also, on their second album, put out kind of a jam band aesthetic. A lot of the people who picked up on them at that point thought of them as a jam band, maybe in the mold of, say, Dave Matthews Band or Fish, maybe. And that happens to be sort of my least favorite mode, and so it's my least favorite, personally, album by them, their second album. But by the third, they were kind of melding the two fairly seamlessly, and I love the looseness of it and the confidence of it. And by the fourth album, I think they were trying to win back some of the momentum that they had with their Mercury Prize winning first album. They just weren't dominating really anywhere, and they never, especially through this point in their career, saw really success in the U.S. It wasn't until their next album had a couple tracks borrowed by Grey's Anatomy, featured kind of strongly in some scenes in Grey's Anatomy early on when everybody knew it was on TV and not current Grey's Anatomy that makes you go, what? That's still on TV? But this album kicks off with some supreme swagger in Do One, and I love it as an opening track. I think it's their strongest opening track, and it's just got some stank on it and just roars, and I think it's a great opener. And the single Silence, which is at track 3, is to me a great infectious pop song with a great chorus that leans into that silence as a motif, that finishes up the chorus in a big chord of saying silence, and then everything will go quiet for a moment, and then they'll kick back in. But it's a very high energy pop song, terrific stuff. Whereas another single, Sweet Virginia, at track 6, also was a very strummy, almost, who's that trio who sometimes sang with Neil Young? CSNY, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. There you go. That kind of feeling, and it's got a very nice melancholy, or bittersweet, I should say, sounding chorus to me that I love to sing, even though you would think that it's not my kind of song at all. But I love Sweet Virginia. We Don't Know Where We're Going is a great, weird kind of art rock song that's kind of very thumpy, and I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it's one of my favorites on there. And that's at track 5. And you know what? I need to blow my nose. I'm trying to prattle on less. So let me just say that 2004's Split the Difference from Gomez is a big recommendation from me. I hope Eric likes it. I hope you like it if you check it out. But with that, so that I can wrap it up, I will throw it over to Eric, who will find a connection on Monday to Gomez's Split the Difference. And yeah, you can look for that on the Plastic Sound Wave Cult. So as for me, I've said all I have to say. So thank you for watching, and bye-bye.